So not just because on February 11th, they were told at 3:17 a.m. on February 11th that sending a porn star's picture with Farrah the Greedy Framer's name on it was an open advertisement for incest, but also because she tried to do this again on March 9th at 5:02 a.m., March 9th at 6:55 a.m., and then March 9th at 12:02 p.m. I'm sorry, no, the wrong one. So March 7th at 10:41 a.m., March 7th at 11:06 a.m., and March 7th at 2:07 p.m., sending me a porn star's picture named Sunny Leone with her name for written on it, even though they were told on February 11th that at 3:17 a.m. that this was an open advertisement for incest. But due to the extreme greed that Farrah the Predator Framer has, she still sent it to me with being the disgusting old predator framer that Farrah the greedy, disgusting individual basically is. And so she still tried it on March 7th, three times, and sending me a porn star named Sunny Leone's picture three times on March 7th in order to try to check to see if I was, yeah. You don't want to know the rest. But basically, Farrah the Greedy Framer has shown greed over and over again. Not just that, March 9th, 2026, advertising her daughter to me again. And then basically April 9th, 2026, sending me at 2:27 p.m. and 2:47 p.m. picture of someone resembling her daughter, try to get me to marry her daughter again. And then right now, again, her greed is shown again starting June 16th at 10:56 p.m., 11:51 p.m., June 17th at 12:16 a.m., June 17th at 8:07 p.m. I told her 5 days ago that I was not interested in her daughter at all and that she has to stop doing this greedy tactic of trying to get me to force me to marry her daughter. Well, yesterday was June 20th. And despite me rejecting her daughter for the past 5 days, she still tried it yesterday, 4 days later, on June 20th at 3:13 p.m. to try to get me married to her daughter, basically by force. Yeah, incredibly disgusting, weird individual, greedy and envious. So the thing that the courts have to understand is the fact that Farrah the Greedy Framer, this is not the first time she was able to create mass panic and chaos using a false testimony and lies, like how she did on November 20th. Now, you have to remember that November 20th was so much so that no news anchor on CNN was able to smile on live TV for days afterwards. People in the government were scrambling to find out the truth on this, and on November 27th, 2025, people like Governor Josh Green of Hawaii were putting aside the vaccine issue, looking at the CNN anchor and saying, confusion is the enemy. We have to remove the confusion. They weren't talking about the confusion around the vaccines, even though that was what was taking the country by storm at the time. They were talking about the confusion around November 20th, mainly because I told the government that law enforcement had made numerous lies against me starting after August 25th, 2023, where they tried to frame me for something and that they were framing me over and over again, and that this was also a lie. And for the Greedy Framer and her Framer sisters, after November 20th, were claiming very aggressively in court that they really did witness me commit some sort of a crime. Now, the thing about it is, it created a huge amount of confusion, mainly due to the fact that for the Greedy Framer, that Predator would not take back her statement, or what her sister's statement that Farrah obviously had a part in playing and helping to fabricate. Not only this, only due to greed, obviously, since on March 7th, she was sending me a porn star's picture with her name on it, and March 9th, trying to get me to marry her weirdo, ugly-looking daughter. It's like, for the Greedy Framer is like this weird, old, ugly woman with like this cloth wrapped around her head looking like a nun, and these are the kind of things she's involved in. March 7th, sending me a porn star's picture with her name, Farrah, written on it, 10:41 a.m., 11:06 a.m., and 2:07 p.m. Not realizing that she dresses up like a nun all day and sends people pictures of porn stars with her name on it through law enforcement, so you could verify it through law enforcement exactly if I'm telling the truth about March 7th or not. You have to remember the fact that when this was sent to me initially on February 11th at 3:17 a.m., they were told by law enforcement that this was an open advertisement for incest, and they still did it on March 7th three times, only because they were so desperate and greedy for the brain savant money that they wanted. March 9th, she tries to get me married to her daughter again. April 9th, 2026 at 2:27 p.m., 2:47 p.m. She tries to get me married to her ugly weirdo daughter named Zara again. And that's what she's been trying for the past couple of days since June 16th, 10:56 p.m., 11:51 p.m., June 17th at 12:16 a.m., June 17th at 8:07 p.m. And once again yesterday with the Zora ad for her ugly weirdo daughter Zara, June 20th at 3:13 p.m. Basically, Farrah the Greedy Framer is a fabricator and liar. Not only did she lie on Fabricate and help to prep her sister to lie on November 20th, 2025, we know for a fact she was involved since as soon as the government informant was known that there was a government informant, first thing the government did was remove her from the spokesperson stand because how good she is at fabricating false testimonies and lies against individuals, which we know for a fact was due to extreme envy of her not being able to profit off of my Brain Savant money for her daughter, due to which she's been advertising her daughter to me every single day for the past week or so, including yesterday, June 20th at 3:13 p.m. Basically, it's all due to extreme envy and extreme greed, but you have to understand the fact that Farrah the Greedy Framer was able to create so much mass panic and chaos after November 20th by prepping her sister to do it, or she fabricated it herself, that no news anchor on CNN was able to smile on live TV for days after November 20th. Now, you also have to look at the fact that even after this, there were more lies that they had already confessed to the government informant, telling the government informant that they were going to make more lies about me, and that and that those lies, whoever confessed to the government informant from these Framer siblings did not tell their other siblings out of fear that they would get yelled at by the other siblings. Like, obviously the other siblings would be like, are you stupid or something? Why did you tell the government informant that? We're so screwed. Now we can't make more lies against him and his Brain Savant's going to get freed. Well, that it did happen in the end, and they became so desperate with greed that they were sending me the same porn star's picture on March 7th that they were told on February 11th at 3:17 a.m. that this is an open advertisement for incest, only because they wanted the illegal assurances of money in any way, shape, or form possible, since they realized that too many lies had been caught and that envy was no longer an option, so they went for greed. And Farrah the Greedy Framer also tried to get me married to her weirdo, ugly-looking daughter on March 9th as well, and also April 9th at 2:27 p.m. and 2:47 p.m. And then obviously the Zora ad continues again from last week, every single day from June 16, 10:56 p.m., 11:51 p.m., June 17, and then yesterday, June 20th at 3:13 p.m. So we know for a fact this is all due to greed, switching over from envy, since even the spokesperson's mother tried to get me married to her weirdo, ugly-looking daughter March 9th at 5:02 a.m. Same thing, March 9th at 6:55 a.m., March 9th at 12:02 p.m., and then again April 12th at 2026 at 1:37 a.m. Even sending me blackmail price tags for mansions in Florida afterwards, after realizing that I have no interest in any of their weirdo, ugly-looking daughters, starting Billionaires Neighborhood of Manala Plan, Florida, April 11, 6:30 a.m. Billionaires Neighborhood of Manala Plan, Florida, April 10, 5:37 a.m. And Blackmail for an oceanfront mansion in Florida, April 9th, 5:30 a.m. Try to get some illegal assurances of money, since they realized that getting me married to her ugly-looking weirdo daughters for either Farrah the Greedy, ugly old framer, or her ugly weirdo sister of spokesperson's mother was not an option. So with their weirdo, ugly-looking daughters was not an option. So they wanted to get illegal assurances of money from me after that. So even right now, Farrah the Greedy Framer, even yesterday, June 20th at 3:13 p.m., was trying to get me married to her daughter forcefully, basically, to which obviously I've been rejecting since the past week, since June 16th when it started. Yeah, so basically the thing that the courts have to understand is the fact that Farrah the Greedy Framer was able to prep her sister to make the false testimony against me, telling her exactly when to start crying, looking like they really did witness me commit the crime, this and that, on November 20th. So much so that no news anchor on CNN was able to smile on live TV for days afterwards. And then after that, more subsequent lies that were already confessed to the government informant as being lies. But whoever out of these Framer siblings confessed to the government informant was too scared to tell her Framer siblings that, look, these lies I've already confessed to the government informant as being lies, out of fear that the other siblings would start yelling at them, obviously saying, are you an idiot? Now the Brain Savant's going to get freed. We're not going to get any of the money, sort of thing, which eventually they did have to tell their Framer siblings, but too little too late, after the courts had already known that these were lies, and the lies were already made in court, despite the courts knowing that those were lies after November 20th, obviously. And then obviously these greedy tactics of trying to get me married to her daughter, or committing incest with me, even offering the big fat ugly predator, sending me pictures of women resembling her March 10th and every single day afterwards. That ugly weirdo predator even sent it to me June 17th, 7:23 p.m., Hershey Hotel and Resorts. I don't think this is greed. This is sexual perversions, and these people need to get themselves checked out. Really big, fat, ugly old woman with these sexual perversions, dressed up like nuns all day, trying to lock up my Brain Savant, and then sending these things without any shame. Anyways, so basically, the thing that the courts have to understand is the fact that Fur the Greedy Framer is basically a predator, and she is a master fabricator. She's great at fabricating false testimonies. She did it on November 20th to the point where no news anchor on CNN was able to smile on live TV for days after November 20th, despite the crime and setting not even existing. And she was able to aggressively push forward those lies that everyone knew were lies afterwards, so aggressively that everyone bought it, until the government informant was pretty much forced to step forward in mid-March 2026 and say, these are all lies, confess to me already as being lies. They were planning on making these lies after November 20th, and that's why they made it. They didn't want to tell their Framer siblings that these were lies, only out of fear that they would get yelled at by their Framer siblings. So basically, yeah, that is what happened. And so the courts have to understand that Fur the Greedy Framer is a master fabricator and liar who's proven her skills time and again. This isn't the only time she's done this, though. We have an incident of her creating so much mass panic and chaos before that foreign governments and countries were forced to basically contact me and tell me that my dad's younger sister was being raped and murdered by someone in U.S. law enforcement. Basically, Fur the Greedy Framer contacted Indian government and told the Indian government that she was being raped and murdered by someone in U.S. law enforcement, and that created so much mass panic and chaos that Indian government was basically forced to go and lecture Joe Biden in front of everyone on human rights and tell him that they were watching their human rights for U.S. very carefully, due to how well Fur the Greedy Framer was in basically manipulating and telling the Indian government that she was getting raped and murdered by someone in U.S. law enforcement. Basically, yeah, they were forced to also tell me that my dad's younger sister was getting raped and murdered by someone. Now, you have to look at what's going on right now. Fur the Greedy Framer's brother, my dad the Greedy Framer, is basically talking to this individual who was supposed to be raping and murdering his sister all day and night long. Fur the Greedy Framer knows this is going on, since she says, hey, look, you're talking to the person whom I accused of raping and murdering me. What she isn't saying is, you're talking to the person who I accused of raping and murdering me, due to which one country had to go lecture another country on human rights abuses, and now you're talking to that person all day and night long. You have to understand that if it was so bad that one country had to lecture another country on human rights abuses, then right now, my dad, the Greedy Framer, her brother, would not be talking to that individual all day and night long. And Fur the Greedy Framer would not just say that, oh, you're talking to the person who almost raped and murdered me. She would be saying, are you insane? That person raped and murdered me almost, and you're talking to that person. But that's not what she's saying. She's simply just saying, you're talking to the person who almost raped and murdered me. And then the next day, she's helping her brother out in this case to make sure that my mother cannot get the money he cannot get, and to make sure that no one else's daughter could get the money that her daughter couldn't get. clearly showing from facts and evidences that she's talking to the same brother, my dad, the greedy framer, while knowing that he's talking to the person who was supposed to be raping and murdering her, and she doesn't care, despite her making such a bold fabricated false testimony at one point that the Indian government was forced to go and lecture Joe Biden on human rights abuses, only because of how good Farah the Greedy Framer was able to fabricate a false testimony. Farah the Greedy Framer has shown her skills in making exaggerated claims, not only on November 20th, based on a crime and setting that did not even exist, but also before then, where she made such exaggerated claims against a person in U.S. law enforcement that the Indian government was basically forced to go and lecture Joe Biden on human rights abuses in front of the entire world, only for us to now find out that Farah the Greedy Framer's brother, my dad the Greedy Framer, talked to that individual all day and night long, from morning till night, and Farah the Greedy Framer knows about it, and all she says is, you talked to the person who was supposed to be raping and murdering me, not saying, you talking to the person who was supposed to be raping and murdering me, and it was such a big deal that one country had to go lecture another country on human rights abuses, and yet you're talking to the... She doesn't care. Right next day, she goes right back to enviously trying to lock up my brain savant, only so that no one else's daughter could get the money that her daughter couldn't get, that she's even not blackmailing me, but trying to force me to marry her daughter yesterday, June 20th at 3:13 p.m. with a Zora ad, clearly showing that she's all about greed for her daughter and enviously trying to make false testimonies against me after already proving not only on November 20th, her skills in making false testimonies to the point that no news anchor is able to smile on live TV for days over a false testimony based on a crime and setting that did not even exist. And also aggressively pushing lies forward that basically were already confessed to the government informant as being planned lies that they were going to make later on, that Farah the Greedy Framer was able to push so aggressively that basically the courts had to buy it till the courts had to basically tell government informant, like mid-March 2026, either you come up and testify and tell everyone exactly what these Framer siblings, Farah the Framers is, the Greedy Framer, the predator, and her Framer sisters were planning on making against me, or we're going to have to buy these lies due to how aggressively and while Farah the Greedy Framer is making these lies, despite us knowing that these are absolute lies that they were already planning on making against me. We still need the government informant to step forward and testify in mid-March 2026 due to how well Farah the Greedy Framer is in making false testimonies, fabrications, and lies and exaggerations. Not only on November 20th, even afterwards. So basically, Farah the Greedy Framer has proven time and again her skills in making false testimonies, exaggerations, lies, and false statements against individuals, to the point that even I was in a state of panic when foreign countries had to contact me and to tell me that my dad's younger sister was being raped and murdered by someone in law enforcement, in U.S. law enforcement. And it got to the point that the Indian government had to get help from Russia and China. That's how well Farah the Greedy Framer was at making this false testimony against an individual from U.S. law enforcement, so much so that all these countries had to get involved and the Indian government had to go lecture Joe Biden on how they were forced to look at U.S.'s human rights abuses, only for us to now find out that Farah the Greedy Framer's brother, my dad the Greedy Framer, has been talking to the man who was supposed to initially rape and murder her, and he's talking to him every single day from morning till night on how to enviously lock up my brain savant or get the money greedily. And Farah the Greedy Framer knows about this, and all she says is, you're talking to the man who almost raped and murdered me. And then she goes right back to court to enviously lock up my brain savant so no one else's daughter could get it, or my mother cannot get the money if her brother, my dad, the Greedy Framer, is not getting it. Clearly showing from facts and evidences that the rape and murder that she was claiming to against a person in U.S. law enforcement at that time was a really big deal that she was able to exaggerate, fabricate, and lie about, to the point that multiple countries had to get involved, and one country India had to send in their ambassadors to go lecture Joe Biden in front of the entire world on how they were watching their human rights abuses very closely, only for us to now find out that it's not as big of a deal as it was before. Since she is not saying anything to her brother, who is clearly talking to the person who was supposed to be raping and murdering her. My dad, the Greedy Framer, is talking to that person all day, every single day, and Farah the Greedy Framer knows about it, and all she says is, you're talking to the person who raped and almost murdered me. That's all she says. And the next day, everything is fine and dandy. No one cares about a single thing. No one cares about a thing. And so, yeah, basically showing from facts and evidences that Furry the Greedy Framer is basically a master fabricator, exaggerator, and liar who is able to exaggerate claims and things to the point that basically everyone has to buy it. Every single government has to buy it, and they are out there lecturing one another on the exaggerations, fabrications, and claims that she makes.